So, hello and welcome to our ongoing series of Icons of Relocation podcast. My name is Simon Johnston. I'm the CEO of Icon Relocation, a provider of world-leading home search, moving, and property management solutions. Now, today, I'm delighted to be joined by a really good old industry friend, namely Darren Porter, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for, well, frankly, longer than I want to calculate, actually, but a good time. And you work for a company called William Russell. Now, for those who don't know you or William Russell, could you give us an insight as to what it is that your company does?
Yeah, of course, Simon. Thank you for having me on the podcast today. It's a pleasure to see you. William Russell, I've been here for nearly 2 years. We're a dedicated expat health insurance provider. So we work with people that live and work all around the world and would need to have a good international health insurance plan. So we have members in about over 160 countries. We're very strong in places like Africa, UAE, Southeast Asia, South America and Europe. And we help people get the right plans in place for their requirements, and we help them that way.
Well, okay, well, that's a pretty big conversation. So let's have a explore this, because maybe unfairly from my side, I always think when you talk about relocation, there's so many conversations that bubbles up to the top, but maybe unfairly insurance perhaps doesn't do so. So let's see if we can correct that. Let's have a sort of a bit of explore on this, if that's okay with you. So the first question that comes to mind, certainly from my perspective, is who's this aimed at? Is this aimed at the companies or the individuals who are relocating, or is it both?
Yeah, we at William Russell, we very much aim at both. So actually, half of our business is dedicated to helping individuals and families, and then the other half of the business is dedicated to helping groups and businesses. So
Right.
we actually work. We don't target, even though we compete with the likes of Cigna and Bupa globally, we don't target multinationals. So if you're working for a big multinational company, you likely have some sort of health insurance coverage through your company. But
Sure.
there are loads of SMEs out there that won't have that in place, and will be looking for solutions for their expat employees to have a good competitive health insurance plan in place for the country they're relocating to. So COVID has changed the face of that. So I think historically, even in the relocation industry, I don't think that the relocation providers would have touched health insurance with a barge pole, because there's so many other things they have to factor into a relocation. But
Right.
because of COVID, companies are very much changing their attitude to making sure that their employees are properly covered. And then I think it's it's a good added benefit for the relocation companies to be able to provide into their offering, because if people are looking for health insurance and pointers in the right direction for people to speak to, then that's why I build partnerships with people like Icon, so that you can refer clients to us and we can help them. But our business is very much half and half, individuals and businesses.
That's really interesting, actually. I had, especially what you said about sort of the SME side of the business. You know, that sort of medium-sized company, perhaps, who is relatively new to global relocation. So you'll be a perfect answer for that. So can we just expand on one bit? When we talk about assurance, what do we mean by assurance? What is it that is the key part of this conversation?
Yeah, so if you're living and working abroad as an expat, and you're living in a foreign country that's not your home country for most of your time, you'll want to make sure you have a suitable health insurance plan, so that you're covered if anything goes wrong in terms of your medical or health situation. So I think generally a health insurance plan would give you, a private health insurance plan would give you access to good doctors, a network of the best hospitals, a network of the best treatments and solutions. It would cover things like cancer treatment. So cancer is obviously not something we like to talk about, but you need to know, if you're working abroad as an expat and you know something should happen and you're actually diagnosed with cancer, that you're covered wherever you want to have your treatments, but you're covered for things like the removal of tumours, for chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, counselling, wigs, and the right kind of drugs. So cancer care is a big part of that coverage. And then also, you just want access to general inpatient and daycare treatment. So you just want to know that every time you go into a hospital, that your admission is covered. And actually, we have a big network of hospitals where you can actually do a cashless. You have a cashless coverage. So you use a membership card, and there's no cash transaction. It's just done directly from the hospital to ourselves, and that the cost is covered. It depends on where you are in the world where you can get that kind of coverage, but that's a useful benefit. benefit. And things like mental health support, I think as an expat, expats are particularly prone to mental health issues, and it's also become an important duty of care for many employers and companies.
Right.
But expat stress and language barriers and cultural barriers, that can lead to all sorts of issues with depression, anxiety, psychosis, bipolar. So you want to know that when you're abroad, again, that if you have access to the right support and help when you need it. And probably one of the most important things is medical emergency and evacuation as well. So if goodness knows, if you're working in a developing country or a real remote location, you need to know that if something happens, that you're covered by evacuation by air, road or sea, and you're taken to a place or a facility where you can be treated in the way you want to be treated. So that's an important coverage. And then there's add-ons like dental care, maternity care, wellness, personal accident cover. So actually, as an insurer, the only products we offer are health insurance, accident and life insurance and income protection. So life insurance is important because, again, if you're working anywhere in the world and if you die, you can cover yourself for up to $2 million. So it just means that your family are provided with some financial security for their future. And that's if anything happens to you because of death or illness or that's a good coverage to have. And then income protection is the other one. We've seen a real increase in people taking out income protection because, again, that safeguards against your lifestyle in the event of any incapacity because of illness or injury, and you can cover yourself up to 80% of your salary. So again, it means that you're covered until you're able to return to work. And some countries, interestingly, are implementing not only income protection as a requirement if you're relocating as an expat, but also for health insurance. Now, more and more countries are adding that you need to have a good international healthcare plan if you're relocating into that location. So Dubai being one of those locations, certainly, and countries now like Sweden, apparently in the last 2 weeks have added this into their policies as well. So in Sweden, you have to have income protection and health insurance if you're relocating as an expat. And I think other countries will change and evolve and will be adding in these requirements so that if you are an expat, you're not a burden to the local healthcare system or local systems.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. What a good answer, by the way. So when you were listening to that, I was thinking that it's maybe easy to get confused between this and travel insurance. These are very different things, aren't they? So is there worth anything to explore there just to make sure we're clear on those differences?
Yeah, no, I think that's always a confusing point for issues. So travel insurance, I would say, is generally for shorter term business trips or annual holidays or vacations. Travel insurance tends to be a lot cheaper, but the benefits through travel insurance tend to be more emergency based. And you know that also with travel insurance, you're covered for things like loss of luggage and cancellations and that kind of thing. But if you're relocating into another country to work and live as an expat, travel insurance isn't going to cover that for you. If you're going to want to have access to proper medical care and treatment, then you need to take out an international healthcare plan or a local plan in that country, depending on where you're going to. So you need to be covered for things like extended hospital stays, routine checkups, wellness and preventative care, prescriptions and medication, and the medical evacuations I mentioned earlier as well. So travel insurance will cover you for short term, but won't cover you fully for medical situations. But the health insurance will give you the coverage that you need when you're living and working globally. And our plans, if you have a plan with us, you're covered wherever you are in the world. So you might be based in a certain country, but if you're traveling for business, from a health insurance perspective, you will always be covered.
That's interesting because I was going to come on to this. I was looking at your website recently, and I love this phrase anyway. You talk about digital nomads, and I have to say this feels like a conversation that really we need to explore at some of the stage in more detail. But so what you were just saying, is that covering that sort of category, that sort of digital nomad where they're sort of living in one location but technically working for another location?
Yeah, we have helped a lot of digital nomads We're helping a lot of the work from anywhere kind of people that you see, entrepreneurs that are setting up in a location that they want to live in because it's a nice location. We are seeing a big increase in those types of people, and obviously they depend on technology to do their job, so that the first thing they always need access to is a good Wi-Fi connection. They can be employed by a company or they can be self-employed. Obviously it works for certain types of jobs and roles, but not for others. I know in the last week, I think I've seen plans open by people moving to Bermuda, to the Bahamas, to the Seychelles. So some people really are looking at wonderful locations to be living and based, and the ability to work from there. And I think there are issues, obviously. So there's the tax. They have to be aware of the tax situation. They have to be aware of the immigration situation and how they can get a visa. Banking and funds transfers can be an issue that you have to take on board. And I think also sometimes they may be missing working with people. So I think looking for opportunities for co-working spaces is really important. So there are loads of issues to think about, but I think that the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. And there are actually loads of countries now that are really encouraging this. So you can get visas for digital nomads there's a big list of countries, but that includes locations like the Bahamas, Barbados, Croatia, Bermuda, Dubai, Mexico, the Seychelles, Spain, Norway. There's a big list of countries that are really encouraging the arrival and support of digital nomads. So I think in the industry we'll see that continue to grow at the same time as well. So it'll be interesting to watch how that develops.
Yeah, wouldn't it just? It does sort of tap into this wider conversation of remote working, doesn't it? And then I know you and I have talked about this historically, but it is a fascinating conversation. But what a really good oversight. So thank you for that. So if somebody is listening to this and going, well, this is something I hadn't thought about, I really need to sort of get some more information or get a quote, I'm going to guess that the best thing we'll do if it's one of our clients or anybody working with us is go and speak to one of the team and they will introduce you. But I suppose otherwise, maybe they can contact you direct. Would that be a correct way of addressing this?
Yeah, I mean, because as I mentioned earlier, because the relocation industry is looking to help support their clients in more of an extended way, and health insurance is certainly part of that. So my role really is to make it easier for people like Icon to be able to refer customers to us, and we'll talk them through obviously the right kind of policies that they need, dependent on where they're moving to. Their age is obviously a factor in the pricing, but we'll help them build a quote. So in your situation, anyone should really reach out to your team, and they can provide a link or our contact details. So if they provide the link, your clients could actually go onto our website and get a really quick, simple online quote within about 2 minutes. So they've got that quote to look at. Someone will reach out to them and see if they have any questions or need any help. But that's the best way, would be to speak to somebody on your team or contact myself directly.
Fantastic. Okay, well, they clearly have to do this, because I have to say, from my point of view, just listening to this, I thought I knew this quite well, but especially the digital nomad aspect and the fact of people working remotely and traveling around. This is something that has got to be addressed, hasn't it? It's not a luxury topic. This is central to somebody's well-being.
Yeah, and companies that didn't have sufficient coverage when COVID kicked in, I think had felt extremely exposed, and they won't want to do that again. So I think also in mobility, where traditionally we talked about long-term and short-term assignments, I think that COVID enforced a new way of working upon us. Which in a good way, it means that mobility now is much more of a strategic function in any company, right? But being able to, I think the other factor here as well is actually the war on talent. I think that companies are really looking at ways of being able to attract the right sort of talent. I mean, I heard the other day, I was at a conference, and they said that in tech companies, they're losing people after 6 months. So it can be a very quick churn. So companies are really looking at ways of how they retain people, but offering really competitive packages. And in the health insurance space, things like adding on your spouses, partners, and your children is an important thing to be able to offer to your employees. So we're definitely seeing more of those types of questions and those types of quotes that we're offering out to people looking to make sure they're retaining and recruiting the best talent.
Isn't that interesting comment? I mean, this is a really key issue to sort of really retain and build your top talent, isn't it? I mean, just
Yeah.
providing this core function gives such a confidence boost. That's a really interesting aspect to maybe sort of close this podcast on. But I have to say, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. This is so enlightening. And it could be that if we get some good questions back from people or some aspects, maybe we can come back and explore this in a bit more detail in
Yeah.
due course. But in the meantime,
Yeah.
Damon, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. Take care.
Take care.